Hello everyone, good evening. So I'm Vishal Salsekar and today we are going to discuss the News Today articles of 26th and 27th of October. Right. So in today's discussion we are going to cover 5 important articles in detail, which includes the first article regarding 22nd India ASEAN Summit. So we'll see what exactly ASEAN is, what is this particular regional grouping. There has been a recent expansion of this particular grouping, and also along with that, what is the significance of the India and ASEAN partnership in this particular context. The next article is regarding Maha MedTech mission. We will holistically see that how this particular mission is striving towards the indigenization of the medical products development, and how that is going to be beneficial for the country like India to become a major exporter of the medical related equipment, right? Next is regarding the United Nations Convention Against Cybercrime. So this is one of the first cybercrime related convention, and we will see how recently there has been increase in the cybercrimes and how this particular convention can be a way ahead with this particular context. The next is regarding the constitutional morality. So it's not a new concept, but there have been certain Supreme Court judgments that again and again talks about that there is a need to ensure that the constitutional morality should remain the pioneer factor as far as the constitutional interpretation is concerned. So we will see regarding the constitutional morality, the concepts along with the further aspects in this particular domain. The last in this we are going to discuss regarding the significant concerns outlook for the Western Ghats. So recently there has been a report from the side of IUCN that has highlighted that how certain areas within India, including the Western Ghat, Manas National Park and others, are facing significant threats. So what are these particular regions, why there are threats, and what this particular region's importance as far as the conservation of biodiversity is concerned. Then after discussion of this, we are also going to discuss about the personality which is in news regarding Vaikunt Bhai Mehta, and then there are certain other important news articles that we are going to discuss briefly. Right. So let's start the discussion with the very first article regarding ASEAN and its importance. Now, since there have been 22nd Association of Southeast Asian Nation, which is the full form of ASEAN, and India Summit has held in Malaysia. That's why this particular summit is important, because previously if you have seen 2025 ka paper, whenever these particular summits are there can be UPSC prelims question regarding which particular declaration led to formation of these organizations, where their headquarters is situated, what is their charter, what is the status of their charter, and what is the role of India as far as that particular organization is concerned, right? So in this particular image you can see the map of ASEAN, which now includes the 11 countries. Previously it used to have 10 countries, right? And out of these 10 countries also, all of them were not the foundational member. So when the ASEAN was formed in 1967, in that particular case, only 5 members of the Southeast Asian geography were member of ASEAN, and gradually then further members were incorporated. Now from the perspective of UPSC examination, there is general studies paper 2, where in the international relations there is a topic of the India's neighborhood policy, and here there may be the neighborhood relations, important international institutions or the regional organizations can be asked by UPSC. So that's why this topic is important. Now talking about ASEAN, firstly, that there has been an expansion. So which particular country has joined? Timor-Leste, right? So UPSC can ask a quick fact regarding this. They will form 3 or 4 statements, where they will give 2-3 statements regarding the initial formation, and then they will say that Timor-Leste is the newest joinee of ASEAN. So in that particular sense, yes, it is correct. So it is the 11th member. Now what is ASEAN? So as the name suggests, it is the association of Southeast Asian nation. That means it is representing the Southeast Asian identity. So that's why this geographical coherence led to the cooperation between these particular countries, and they came forward in order to ensure a regional identity in the name of ASEAN. Now, this particular organization was formed through the ASEAN Declaration, which was the Bangkok Declaration of 1967, and this particular declaration, as the name suggests, was signed in Thailand, and there were 5 countries which were the pioneer countries of ASEAN. Which were those 5 countries? It includes the countries like Indonesia, which was the foundational members. I'm writing like F. Then there was Malaysia, second. Then there was Philippines, third. There was Singapore, and there was Thailand. So these were the 5 foundational members of ASEAN. And later on, gradually the other members, which includes the Brunei Darussalam, then Cambodia, Laos PDR, then there is Myanmar, and then there is Vietnam. So these 5 also joined, not exactly in the manner that I have told, right? So these including the 10 member, and now the latest one is the Timor-Leste. So when it is representing certain geographical identity, so it gives a coherence to this particular grouping, right? Now, what are the highlights? Because whenever there is any specific summit, there are certain highlights regarding which even UPSC can be interested about. And UPSC had asked recently in the last year or this particular year only in the prelims examination, they have asked regarding BIMSTEC also and the BRICS also. So there is no surprise if in the next year they might ask regarding ASEAN. So you can expect the question regarding these particular topic. Now, what is the ASEAN and India relationship? Because whenever UPSC asks the question, they try to fit India angle into that. So present status of the relationship is the comprehensive strategic partnership since 2022. Now, what is the comprehensive strategic partnership? So this is basically a elaborated, or we can say enhanced level of strategic partnership, which includes the partnership in all the possible domain, including the defense, including innovation, including technology, including cooperation, maybe in the maritime domain. So in many such ways they are cooperating, and then they are coming together discussing the issues generally on a yearly basis with the head of the states meeting, right? So generally on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit, ASEAN India summit also takes place, right? So since 2002, we are continuously having this particular summit level partnership where we are participating as a summit level partner. Now, does this give status to India as the member of ASEAN? The answer is no. India is not a member of ASEAN, but India is closely cooperating with ASEAN. India is doing the summit level partnership or taking participations in the ASEAN summit on a yearly basis, right? So why it was further in news? Because Prime Minister of India has not directly taken participation. He addressed the ASEAN Assembly virtually, right? And on his behalf, the External Affairs Minister had taken participation in this. That's why it may be further important that UPSC might be interested about this particular organization. Now, what were the key declarations or key important aspects that were as the outcome of this summit? So the support for the ASEAN India Plan of Action. So what is this particular ASEAN India Plan of Action? Is to implement ASEAN India Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. Now see, as the part of this particular Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, we have taken certain targets: people to people cooperation, forming certain kind of maritime related alliance, maritime security related alliance. Then apart from that, supporting each other in the blue economy, supporting each other's cause, like for example in the South China Sea and all, right? So there are certain areas of cooperation where there is plan of action that has been decided, and in order to implement that, there has been declaration made, there has been a statement provided regarding this. Now this is for the 2026 to 30. This is the timeline. Next is the ASEAN India Joint Leaders Statement on the Sustainable Tourism. So since the countries are basically maritime countries or maritime in nature, and India is also focusing upon the blue economy and the tourism, because India is sharing the cultural linkage. This particular region has the historical ties with India. That's why whether the tourism is there, that should be sustainable in nature. That's why the focus is specifically on the sustainable tourism. Next is regarding 2026 to be celebrated as the ASEAN India Year of the Maritime Cooperation, because this is the domain which is a connecting link, because historically India has the trade relation with many of these particular countries, specifically through the sea or the oceanic routes. right? Because very few countries have the land border with India when we talk about the Southeast Asian region. So Myanmar is the country where we are having the land boundary, but then there are maritime boundary with many such countries, right? That's why it is important. Then also there is a proposal to establish a center of Southeast Asian studies at the Nalanda University. Now why Nalanda University is significant? Because one such common link is Buddhism. Apart from that, many such scholars from the Southeast Asian countries, even including China, arrived in India, and they had got the education and development of the text. Even apart from that, the Buddhism related linkages with India. That's why it is important. And Nalanda University historically was a significant center of excellence as far as the Buddhism and many other domains are concerned, right? Lastly, the East Asia Summit, which is generally held every year, right? So the Maritime Heritage Festival jo iska hai, that is proposed to be planned in the Lothal, Gujarat. Now Lothal is ancient point of time, so it is very significant location since the time period of IVC, and that's why in the East Asia Summit mein Maritime Heritage Festival is proposed to be celebrated at Lothal, Gujarat, right? So these are certain outcomes of this particular ASEAN India Summit. Now what is the significance? Because see, if the current affairs is giving certain context to the topic, then the topic itself also becomes important. So what is the significance of ASEAN for India? So there are certain important commonalities. The regional connect is very, very important. The China factor is very, very important. So what are these? First, India's support to ASEAN centrality. Now what is this ASEAN centrality? That means if you look at the map of the ASEAN and even the location of India and positioning of ASEAN, you will see that from the position of the eastern part of Africa to the western part of Americas, the entire construct is the Indo-Pacific. Now ASEAN countries are situated at the pivotal location, which is roughly at the center of this Indo-Pacific. Now when we are talking about Indo-Pacific, so generally the countries try to shift the focus away from ASEAN country, which also makes ASEAN country comparatively anxious that is the world's focus is shifting away from us. That's why India is reaffirming that even if we are talking about Indo-Pacific, but you are at the center of the Indo-Pacific. That's why the ASEAN centrality. Now how India is assuring that? So you might have already heard of the Act East policy. So in 1992, India came up with the Look East policy. In 2002, India came out with the Look East through the Northeast, like mainly economic cooperation along with the other cooperation, but mainly through the Northeastern region. And then 2014, there have been significant focus provided towards the actionable outcome, and hence the Act East policy was laid out as an enhanced version of the Look East policy. So Look East and the Act East policy presently which is working. Apart from that, India's Indo-Pacific strategy. In that Indo-Pacific strategy, whether it is the ASEAN's outlook on the Indo-Pacific and India's approach towards the Indo-Pacific, whether through Quad or whether through any other organization like the Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative. So these particular things are putting ASEAN at the center. Next is regarding trade. Now see, since 2009, India has signed a free trade agreement with the ASEAN countries, but mainly that particular agreement is working in goods domain. So it is the ASEAN-India Trade in Goods Agreement. Now, in the recent summits, India had again and again reiterated that there should be a basic enhancement as far as the subjects are concerned. So if it is only about good, then obviously the other countries which are mainly exporter to India are going to take the advantage. But if it includes the services also, if there is revival of certain new terms, because previously what has happened that generally India importer raha hai from these particular countries, and hence what these particular agreements led to that further flooding of the external product within India, while the India's export to these countries have reduced. So in that particular manner, it is the ratio of 75-25 ki 75% their export increased in India and India's export increased to their country roughly 25%. That means India has not got much benefit. That's why India wants to revive this particular thing even for the services related agreement. Right now the bilateral trade is $123 billion roughly, and where India is having a large deficit. So this deficit need to be plugged. This is the total trade volume, but a major deficit India is having, and specifically from the countries like Singapore, the countries like Malaysia, जहां से काफी चीजें India import करता है. So in that particular case, if the services also gets included, obviously India is going to get benefited. That's what India is asking for, the review of this ASEAN-India Trade in Good Agreement. Next is counterbalancing China. Now many countries of ASEAN sees China as a threat also, or the regional threat. The reason simply is the South China Sea. Now, in the South China Sea, the problem is that China's territorial claim within that particular region or the sea domain is conflicting with the other countries. For example, with Philippines, they are having issues on the Scarborough Shoal. With Vietnam, they are having the issues over EEZ. With Malaysia, they are having issues. With Indonesia, they are having issues. And that's why the countries want alternative. And here India fits in order to provide support, not against China as such, but basically to provide the support for the open and neutral Indo-Pacific region, and obviously for the benefit of the entire humanity. So ASEAN-India joint statement on the maritime cooperation, that is there. Then development of the India's northeast. Now when we are connecting the Southeast Asian region from India, the ultimate option which is very near to us is through Myanmar, right? Because then Myanmar is connected to the different countries through the land route, right? And in that particular sense, we are connecting, because since 2002 we are focusing upon the look east through the northeast region, and hence this particular thing is going to develop even the India's northeastern region and specifically the northeastern states. And here there is a project which is going on, which is the Kaladan multimodal transit and transport project, which is connecting the West Bengal region through the Bay of Bengal, through Myanmar, and through Myanmar it is connecting the Mizoram. So there is the proposed timeline that is provided for this is 2027 कि भाई ये majority operational हो जाएगा by 2027. Lastly, multilateralism. Last discussion mein we had discussed this topic holistically. Now both ASEAN and India both are supporter of multilateralism. They want that there should be alteration of the global order. Whatever issues that this world order is having, there should be alteration, there should be expansion of the UNSA, there should be reforms at the IMF, because these are representing the countries of the global south. That's why they want the reform in this particular global order, right? Now having discussed about the ASEAN-India partnership, now exactly to nahi, lekin हाँ, there are certain times inspired question also comes. Read this question. The new trilateral partnership AUKUS is aimed at countering China's ambition in the Indo-Pacific region. So this is the organization which is formed by Australia, UK and US. Is it going to supersede the existing partnership? What is the existing partnership? It is ASEAN mainly, or the ASEAN centrality. Discuss the strength and impact of AUKUS. So to some extent, this question is also focusing upon or questioning upon the centrality of ASEAN, and hence there can be even question that you can expect if there is a debate going on regarding this. Next article is regarding the mission for the advancement in high impact area, which is the acronym for MAHA. ठीक है, MAHA, Mission for Advancement in High Impact Areas, MedTech mission. So medical technology related mission which is launched by government, right? Now from the perspective of examination, because it is dealing with the health related sector or the innovation in that, that's why GS paper 2 in the social justice section it can be easily fitted. Apart from that, the medical governance or the health governance related things, apart from that, government initiatives, and even from GS paper 3, because we are talking about the indigenization. So whether you talk about the economic development or whether you talk about the health infrastructure, it is important topic. So then what is this mission for advancement in the high impact area, MedTech mission? So as the name suggests, it is regarding development of medical technology in India. Now how you are going to innovate in the medical technology or develop the medical technology? First thing, you can do the innovation. That means certain things which we were importing previously, if we do innovate, we can find out the problem of those particular issues. Even apart from that, if we are going to develop those things within India, that means the cost that we are bearing in order to take those products within India, that means importing them, that can be reduced. And India is one such country which is having the large population burden. In that sense, if there is indigenization of the medical technology, to larger extent, the medical sector can be affordable. Right now it is affordable to some extent, but it can be made as affordable, it can be made as accessible, it can be made as available at get the quick steps, right? So that's why this particular mission is very, very important. Now, regarding the mission, what can be asked further by UPSC in the prelims related things? Who has launched? So it is Anusandhan National Research Foundation, which was formed under the ANRF Act. Anusandhan National Research Foundation 2023 में form हुआ था, right? Apart from that, ICMR, Indian Council of Medical Research, related with the medical related research, and then there is the Gates Foundation, which is also a member of this. So there can be a question which is stating that only government. The answer is no. There are certain other institutions which are part of it. Next is, what is the aim? As I have already discussed, to accelerate the innovation in the medical tech sector. Now, what kind of innovation? So innovation, indigenous development, that means development within the India. So research and development karna, affordable banana, reduction of the cost, and eventually that makes the things affordable, right? Apart from that, it will ensure the affordability. It will also ensure the high quality. Generally, what happens, let's see, all the country prioritize themselves. Suppose if there is a pandemic situation like COVID-19, right? And in that particular sense, the world is facing scarcity as far as the medical technology is concerned. Do you think at that point of time, other countries are going to give those equipment to India? The answer is clearly no. Initially, they will go for fulfilling their own need. Then only they will go for giving such things. You have seen those prime examples in the form of the vaccine related diplomacy that was done. And then India launched the vaccine Maitri. So through this particular initiative, India can become a net exporter of the medical technology, medical equipment, and low cost affordable equipment India can supply to the world. Right now, India is doing the same things with respect to the pharmacy, like in the form of generic medicines, right? So the same thing can be replicated over here, and eventually the economic benefit is going to be there, because अब जब export करोगे ज़्यादा, that means you are going to get money in return, right? And eventually that will make sure that your medical or the health related sector is doing comparatively good. Now, obviously you will have to give funding. So the funding will be provided to whom? The funding will be provided to the academic and the R&D institution in order to find the innovative solutions. Then the hospitals, obviously, to implement them. Apart from that, startups are there, MSMEs are there, medtech sector or industries are there. So basically, through industry, academia, MSMEs, and the companies which are going to develop based upon this particular scheme, that particular section is going to get the funding. Now, what is the amount of funding? There is a milestone linked funding. That means if you achieve certain milestone, depending upon that, you are going to get the money. So what is that particular range? It is roughly 5 to 25 crore per project. So 5 to 25 crore. Now, even maybe a chance that suppose if you are working upon certain complicated issues, so the government has also kept an exception that if there is certain exception has to be made, it can be increased even up to 50 crore. That means if your developmental wala area is doing something exceptionally good, in that case, it can be even fund up to 50 crore. Now, what kind of support that will be provided to you? So the support will be the national initiatives ke form mein. For example, there may be Patent Mitra. Now, the Patent Mitra say what you are understanding, that means there will be better facilitation for the patent filing or e-filing of the patent. Regarding support regarding the awareness for the patent related things. So the patent related support is being provided to you. Suppose if you are an industry or academia and if you have done something exceptionally good, in that particular case, the government will support you with respect to the filing of the patent, and eventually then you are going to get the benefit out of that, right? Then the MedTech Mitra. So see, generally hota kya hai ki there are sometimes the compliance related things, sometimes there are certain complexities attached to that particular project, right? So those facilitation will be provided to you. So here the best practices, compliance mechanism, regulatory support, these particular support is going to be provided to you. So it will act as a kiosk for your facilitation. Next is the clinical trial related network. So see, when you are going to develop any specific project, obviously the final permission will be only provided to you when that is providing certain result which is successful, right? And for that, obviously, you will be ensuring the clinical trials, and for that, government is going to provide you the clinical trial related network, including the environment. So all these things are going to ensure that the mission for advancement in high impact area for the medtech sector is going to do comparatively good. Now, why we are focusing a lot on this, and even apart from that, which particular technological areas it is going to focus upon. So talking about the technological areas that it is going to focus upon, it is going to provide focus with respect to the innovative medical devices. We know that when we are providing support for the R&D and the other things, obviously we want or we expect the innovation. That means some problem that we are facing, the devices that are being done or the technology that is being developed, that is going to support that particular issue. Then even apart from that, IVD or the in vitro diagnostics, that is also being supported. वो technologies भी which is providing the in vitro diagnostics, that is also going to be supported, or that is also going to be provided with the funding, right? So out of the body, in basically the lab related setup, what kind of diagnostics that you can do, how the early detection of that particular disease, those things are also going to get the support. Then the high end frontier technologies, whether it is 3D printing, whether it is robotics, whether it is the artificial intelligence, machine learning, whether it is any major things, stem cell therapy and all these things are going to get targeted in this. So you can assume it is including the larger section within the medical sector is concerned. AI ML enabled platform and devices. So all these things are being part of this. Now, when we talk about the India's medtech sector, generally the question if they are asking, अब इतना सिर्फ स्कीम सेंट्रिक न होते हुए, it can be asked like regarding the medtech sector and the opportunities in the medtech sector. So you should be having some data regarding this, right? So it is a sunrise sector, which means that it is growing sector, and further there are high chances that it will grow further, because when the population is high, when the old age population is also going to increase, and apart from that, a lot of issues are there, lifestyle diseases are there, right? So there will be certain issues, and for that we will need technological solutions. So it is estimated to be around 14 billion as of now, and it is expected to rise around $30 billion. That means there is a high potential in this particular area. Now when we talk about the medical devices related export from India, it has crossed 4 billion mark. That means already India is exporting, so it will further boost that particular export capability of India. India is fourth largest medical device market. So it is also one such fact. And which particular countries apart from India? And we are talking about obviously Asia, right? So the Japan, China and South Korea, and after that we are the fourth largest medical device market in India. That means India have comparatively better opportunities. If we are going to either collaborate and also work upon our capabilities, we will be able to even surpass these particular countries. Now for this, what government is doing, there is production linked incentive. That means whatever production you are doing, for certain amount we can incentivize you, right, based upon your export and production. Then the promotion of the research and innovation in pharma and the medtech sector, for the research development innovation ke liye we are going to provide support. This is also one such scheme through which we are providing support. Then the national medical device policy, obviously that particular policy is going to support the initiatives like this, medical device parts. So all these are going to provide support for the innovation, then development, then the production and further export of this, and that is going to help the entire medical industry, right? So the question that UPSC had asked, similar looking question, not exactly same obviously. How is the government of India protecting the traditional knowledge of medicine from patenting by the pharmaceutical companies? Now it was asked in 2019, they were asking about the traditional knowledge, because India has historical awareness regarding a lot of things, whether surgery, whether it is the different type of medicinal products, right? And what the other companies are doing, they are getting the patent of those particular products. So in that case, how India is providing support to the local people or the indigenous communities with respect to that, or how India is preventing those people. So at that point of time, there was a debate going on regarding this turmeric and all these things. That's why there was a question regarding this. Next is the topic of United Nations Convention Against Cyber Crime. So there are 72 nations which have signed the UN Convention Against the Cyber Crime in Hanoi, Vietnam. Right now, from the perspective of UPSC, again GS paper 2, because if there is any organization in news or any convention, that can be asked in the international relations, right? Even apart from that, GS paper 3, because when we talk about the cyber crime, it is part of the internal security syllabus, core syllabus, right? So that's why the internal security, where the cyber issues and all are very prominent, right? Now what is this UN Convention Against Cyber Crime? Why we are talking about this? Because this is the one such milestone, which is one of the first convention like this regarding the cyber crime. So what it is doing, it is the world's first legally binding global convention to prevent and respond to the cyber crimes. Now you might be thinking, What exactly is cyber crime? So suppose karo, when you are using your mobile phone or let's say laptop or doing any financial transaction, sometime you receive the call na ki I am XYZ from this department, we have found out certain narcotics or some substance in your bag. Now you have to reveal your identity, you have to give the details, you have to validate your Aadhaar, you have to click on this link, right? So these kind of things, when that is that is happening with you, that particular thing can be one such way of cyber fraud. But then there are many other things, some type of spoofing, maybe spamming, maybe phishing, maybe let's say ransomware attack, maybe data theft. There are n number or the numerous ways in which the cyber crime can take place, right? It's not necessarily that only after taking the OTPs or clicking on the link the cyber crime takes place. And it's not only India, it's across the world, because when the data is there on the portals or data is there on the globe, the data is bound to be vulnerable, and hence in this particular sense there are high chances of the cyber crime. And it's not like that only one country will be able to prevent that, because when the data is online it is not seeing any specific border, right? So in that particular case it is the global cooperation that is needed, and this can be considered as the one such earliest step in this particular regard. Now, what is this particular convention? So it was adopted in UNGA in 2024, and the condition that was mentioned that it will enter into force 90 days after the ratification by at least 40 member states. Now right now what has happened, roughly 72 member states have signed. Now after that their parliamentary or whatever system they are following will ratify. Once they will ratify, after 90 days of this particular ratification, it will come into force. It will be legally binding for those countries which have signed and ratified, right? Now what this particular convention is, first it is talking about the electronic evidences. Now what is this electronic evidences? Maybe the details regarding the financial transaction, details regarding the images and the videos shared, details regarding the links, detail regarding certain things which is available online, right? So in that particular case, it is the first global framework for the collection, sharing and use of the electronic evidences. So this convention is giving focus upon the electronic evidences, because in the cyber crime this is the one such thing that is available, though no physical generally contract or certain things are available, it is generally the electronic evidences, right? Next is criminalization of cyber crimes. So many such places पे or many such countries के जो laws हैं that are not considering cyber crime as the criminal offense, right? And hence generally what the countries might have done, either they have created their own framework. For example, India has incorporated those particular things in Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita to some extent regarding the online crimes or basically the organized crime context, right? But then there are cyber dependent crimes and the offenses that are the online frauds, maybe the fraud regarding, let's say, sharing certain images or obscene video that has been maliciously created utilizing certain electronic tool, or maybe your own video that is getting circulated, offensive videos against children, against women, right? So these particular things are going to get dealt with this particular convention. So it also recognizes the non-consensual dissemination of the intimate images as an offense. Matlab, if you have possession of certain content regarding this and you are circulating, that means the criminal proceedings can be initiated against you. So it will not be dealt as a normal offense, it will be a criminal offense now. And see, as I've told you, that it is not seeing any border. So if you are sharing, let's say, with a person sitting in America, so obviously there will be the convention that is needed, which is incorporating those countries, so that if, let's say, India tomorrow asks the support from America in order to try that particular individual, so there should be a global network, and hence the global network is being created with the first global 24/7 cooperation network. जैसे ही कोई cyber crime report होता है, there will be global network regarding that activated, and that will go through the entire world का जो data है regarding that particular thing, right? So these are the things as of now that are part of the convention. That means holistically it is incorporating the electronic evidences, even those things, your data, your personal things that should not be circulated without your consent. It is including the non-consensual, even it is incorporating cooperation between different countries regarding this. Now when we are talking about cyber crimes, now as we have discussed the definition of cyber crime, but it can be of two types. One, which is the conventional crime facilitated by the cyber domain, let's say Initially there was money laundering, it was even before the arrival of cyber, but through the arrival of the digital age, there have been even incorporation of, let's say, blockchain technology in this. So now this thing is further enabled by that. So cyber enabled crimes are those conventional crimes which are now going on in the online mode. So it is the traditional criminal activity conducted online, maybe let's say hawala network, maybe money laundering network, like this. Next is the cyber dependent crime. For this, there should be existence of the cyber network. For example, let's assume the scenario, if there is no data online, in that particular case, how somebody is going to theft your data, do the theft on your data, right? If suppose karo, if you are not operating any mobile device, how one can take out the money from your account, right? So the problem is that there are certain crimes which are dependent on cyber. If there is cyber related thing, if there is electronic things, then there are crimes that may be there. There may be phishing, there may be ransomware attack, there may be malware attack, Trojan horse attack, right? So these particular things, they committed through the use of the information and the communication technology devices. Now what is the threat? Now see, again, like discussed in the last article, if there may be a question regarding the cyber security or cyber threat, obviously you are expected to quote certain relevant data which is updated also. So see, it is transcending through the geographical boundaries because it is not seeing any specific boundary. It is targeting system, network, individual. So ऐसा नहीं है कि it is only targeting individual, only cooperation. Depending upon the relevance, it can target individual also, company also, specific set of individual, maybe specific sex, specific maybe the age group के below या age group के ऊपर, right? So that may be there. Apart from that, by 2024 there is a data that approximately 65, so it is roughly 65, 60 to 68% के around global population which is online. That means they have online presence. When you have online presence, that means it is giving you opportunity also, because there are a number of online opportunities, but it is also making you vulnerable, because suppose if there is a deep fake, then obviously that deep fake can be misutilized also. So that's why it is opportunity also, it is vulnerability also. This is giving an data regarding the online population. The regions like Southeast Asia and the South Asias are the major hotspot, because you will see that major threat with respect to these networks are to the population of these countries. Generally, the answer for this particular thing is because of the lack of regulatory framework or lack of the data protection related sensitivity in these particular regions mainly. So they are described generally as the ground zero for these, right? So these data and the fact can be utilized directly. Now see the previous year question, like what are the different elements of the cyber security? Keeping in view with the challenges in cyber security, examine the extent to which India have successfully developed the comprehensive national cyber security strategy. Now see, like this, the question was asked regarding cyber security. Now in the context of the recent UN related convention, there can be further question regarding this. So what thing it is addressing, or what can be the further way ahead that can be expected from your side, right? The next article, I would say very important article from the GS2 perspective. Definitely it is going to be a very important question, maybe this year, maybe next year, but बहुत important topic है, which is regarding the constitutional morality. And this is one such earliest topic that you read when you are going through the polity related syllabus. So the article is regarding the constitutional morality, a tool to combat the social evils. So this article is basically talking about how the term which is constitutional morality, which is not a term only, which is a basic philosophy behind the constitution, that the constitution should not be interpreted in the literal sense कि भाई अगर equality लिखा है तो everyone should be equal. No, there are different sections of society. In that sections also, some may be comparatively having well positioned, some may be deprived. So in that case, you have to ensure that equal treatment, but there should be certain differential treatment also in order to support the larger section. तो आपको जो constitution की line पढ़नी है, the lines of the constitution when you are reading, that should be not exactly in the literal meaning, but the liberal meaning, means in order to incorporate the larger benefit. And this is the thing that you can see with respect to the interpretation of Article 21 of the Indian Constitution, which is providing right to life and liberty, which is the part of the part 3, which is fundamental rights, right? So GS paper 2, polity, constitution, governance, social justice, it is important. Salient feature of constitution, separation of power between various organs and all. And even apart from that, GS paper 4, ethics, because in ethics also there are questions that can be asked, and even there have been questions that have been asked from constitutional morality. Now, the term what is constitutional morality? मतलब क्या है इस particular term का? So to some extent I have already addressed. So it is the adherence to the constitutional norm. So see, there were debates around the constitution that is it sufficient to just have the constitution, or there should be more than that particular thing is needed. So the answers came like, if there is a constitution, obviously it is going to codify a lot of laws. But what if that particular law is taking care of that time and space? मतलब अगर laws बने हैं 1950 में, the society was like not exactly like right now. What kind of society it is? There are a lot of extra things that have been incorporated, whether it is the aspects regarding privacy, whether it is aspects regarding pollution, whether it is the artificial intelligence, whether it is the online related things, cyber fraud. So वो चीजें तो उतना predominant था नहीं, right? So hence there should be interpretation of those particular article in the light of the present time and space, and there should be liberal interpretation in order to keep the spirit of constitution alive. So the constitution should not be thought as a rigid document, but as a liberal document empowering people, and that's what is the meaning of the constitutional morality. So the constitutional norm should not only in letter but also in spirit, right? If it is said that by right to life and liberty hai, so it should not be only taking one's life. Even there may be multiple facets of life. Pollution free environment is also right to life. Right to privacy is also right to life. Having shelter is also right to life. Recognizing different genders is also right to life. So there may be multiple manifestation, right? Now there have been multiple interpretation by the historians also. For example, George Grote, who have given this particular concept, or we can say popularized this concept, said that bhai, it is a balance between the freedom and restraint. देखो, ऐसा नहीं है कि only freedom should prevail, otherwise it will lead to the situation of anarchy. मतलब freedom if provided to you that you can criticize the government institutions, there is no check on you. That means you can criticize like anything, any extent. That means there are chances for the vested interest also people can criticize, right? So that's why first citizens should follow the constitution. There should be norms of the constitution that should be followed. But at the same time, people should have power to criticize also the constitution. That means not exactly constitution, but the institution that were made. For example, let's say if there is any constitutional body that is not functioning at par, if the government is not functioning at par, if there are any institution not functioning at par, so there should be power available to you that can provide you the way ahead with respect to criticizing or ensuring accountability. तो ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि constitution is absolute. There is nothing like you can't expect any alteration in the constitution, but it should not be like it should be so fragile that you can destroy anything, right? So there should be a balance. So citizens should obey constitutional authorities. For example, if there are constitutional bodies, elected government, that should be obeyed. But at the same time, there should be freedom to criticize them. What this freedom will ensure? This freedom will ensure the responsibility and accountability. If there is no responsibility, these institutions can turn anarchic, right? Or maybe these institutions can be autocratic. So in that particular situation, you will not have any specific power. Now, in the context of India, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, while quoting the thoughts from the side of George Grote, right, he also mentioned that Indian society has multiple disparities and inequalities. We have poverty-related issues, we have hunger. There are a lot of issues are there that were being faced by the Indian society, and that should be resolved, and that can be resolved only based upon the principle of constitutional morality. We can't make a constitution that will be providing all the power to all. So that has to be interpreted. So the bodies which will be interpreting this, it is the task of them in order to incorporate the constitutional morality. And it is not such thing which is neutral, मतलब अपने आप आ जाएगा. It has to be inculcated. It is one such virtue which has to be learned. So whether government, whether institutions, whether any other body, that should incorporate that. It must be cultivated. Now, how constitution is having the constitutional morality? So we know that there are fundamental rights, which is part 3 of the Indian Constitution, from the article 12 of the Constitution to 35, which is talking about fundamental right, which is justiciable also, and which is giving you power that if they are not being provided to you, you can reach to even the Supreme Court in order to assert that right. Exceptions are there, but yes, majority extent mein they are enforceable. DPSPs, which are certain aspirations that were thought कि भाई ये चीजें भी होना चाहिए, बट बिकॉज ऑफ द लैक ऑफ रिसोर्सेज दीज थिंग्स वर नॉट मेड एज जस्टिशिएबल. बट दीज आर ऑल्सो वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट प्रोविजन, whether you talk about related to education, whether you talk about related to health, related to different vulnerable sections, it is talking about that, even including the Uniform Civil Code. Then the preamble, which is highlighting the values, whether sovereignty, whether territorial integrity and all these things, it is being highlighted by preamble. These things को इंटरप्रेट करते हुए ही कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन का इंटरप्रिटेशन हुआ है बाय द सुप्रीम कोर्ट इन डिफरेंट जजमेंट्स. लास्टली फंडामेंटल ड्यूटीज दो वर नॉट पार्ट ऑफ द ओरिजिनल कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बट वर एडेड थ्रू द 42nd कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट एक्ट. आर्टिकल 51A talks about these particular fundamental duties, and they are basically the expectations from the side of citizen, that on one side you are enjoying rights, but on the other side you should also be responsible for doing certain duties, right? Now what is the significance? So see, when you are having constitutionally preserved rights, matlab you have fundamental rights, so basically there can be some expectation also that you should be adhering to certain duties. So it is providing the constitutional guarantees which will ultimately ensure the justice. ऐसा नहीं कि भाई the justice should be accessible only to those who are well worthy or rich people. It should be even accessible to the poorest of the poor population, right? So this is the case. That means this constitutional morality will ensure that the constitutional guarantee should not be the mere talkative statements, it is also the tangible justice. Now, how the courts at different point of time have incorporated the constitutional morality. So there are certain case laws. Now see, this can be as it is quoted in the answer. UPSC can ask the question like this. They have asked already similar kind of question, and they can ask, for example, for gender justice they have asked, for example, article interpretation of article 21 they have asked. So like this also there can be a question that you can expect regarding the interpretation of constitutional morality. So here, how the different constitutional morality related things, which is talking about the social justice or social change. First, it includes the women equality. The constitution says that there should be equality and even certain specific rights or privileges provided to women. Now, even after that, there were certain discriminatory practices. For example, a very famous case of the Sabrimala temple entry, which was banned for the certain age population of women, which was basically the menstruating age. Now, in that particular sense, Indian Young Lawyers Association versus State of Kerala case tha 2018 ka, which held this particular practice as unconstitutional, prohibiting the entry of the menstruating women in the Sabrimala temple premise. So that was held unconstitutional, it was removed. Now, what is the principle? The principle of constitutional morality is working over here, that the right to life, right to dignity, then apart from that, untouchability related things can be interpreted over here, including equality. Then protecting privacy. You know, there was a very famous case of K.S. Puttaswamy case versus Union of India in 2017-18, which talked about the right to privacy as the fundamental right which protects the individual's dignity, autonomy and the freedom. So in 2017, this particular judgment was there in order to provide the or protect the privacy of the individual. Now this privacy is not just ki bhai you should not be entering upon a room where an individual is there, but it is also about other domain, whether it is digital domain, whether it is about the person's gender and all these things, whether the religion, what religion it is following. So there should be no encroachment upon the privacy except certain circumstances. Then there are certain positive transformation related things. Now see, both of them are to enforce the social justice. Even positive transformation. Now, there are many such sections of society which are vulnerable. One such section is basically the section regarding the LGBTQ community, or basically we can say the issues like homosexuality. So in that particular cases, before this Navtej Singh Johar case, Navtej Singh Johar versus Union of India case, it was the criminalization of the homosexuality that was there through section 377 of IPC. Now that has been removed and now that is decriminalized. So right now the IPC has itself been replaced, but before that also it was a decriminalized. Now which particular case law? Navtej Singh Johar. Now again, the interpretation of constitution in a broader light. Next is Joseph Shine versus Union of India. Again similar kind of case law, but now regarding the 497 of IPC, which is regarding the adultery. So this has a decriminalized the adultery related issues. So these are certain positive aspects of the constitutional morality. Now see, it is not the exclusive list. There may be n number of other things which has already happened or that may come. So those things can be incorporated in your examples when you are making the notes on that, and that can be exactly replicated in the answer, right? Okay, next. Okay, now the PYQ, what is meant by the term constitutional morality? How does one uphold the constitutional morality? Ethics में पूछा गया था question. Very simple. Even there were short notes and all that were also asked regarding this. The last article in this is regarding the IUCN World Heritage Outlook 4 report, which categorizes the Western Ghats as being the significant concerns. Now, we have already discussed briefly about this particular report which is being released by IUCN. So, UPSC can simply ask one thing, ki the World Heritage Outlook 4 report that has been released by which organization? IUCN. Now, again, later on, then there are certain other things. So, prelims related, these questions can be asked. What are the categories? So, categories are critical, then significant concerns, then good with some concerns, then good. Right. So from the perspective of UPSC, GS paper 3, environment and the associated aspects including conservation, this can be a probable topic. Now, what is this IUCN World Heritage Outlook? Now, as the name suggests, that it is the assessment of the conservation prospects of the World Heritage sites. So, what all World Heritage sites are there, it is checking those particular sites for the natural values, that what extent may there are certain concerns that are attached to those particular sites, whether they are in good category or they are good with certain concerns. That means जो practices चल रहे हैं ठीक है but deteriorate नहीं होने देना, or whether it is a significant concerns का category, that means it is getting deteriorated, and if there is no reversal that is being done, it will get further deteriorated. मतलब अगर आपने ध्यान नहीं दिया, it will get destroyed completely, right? So it is assessing this in 4 categories: good with some concern, significant concerns, and critical. So 4 categories are there. Obviously good means everything is going fine. Good with some concerns means certain issues are there, but broadly the policy is taking care of that. Significant concerns means there is deterioration which is going on. So there is current threats and potential threats are there. It requires the additional things or additional support. Critical means it is already getting depleted. There is urgent need in order to resolve those issues. Now, significant concerns category mein Western Ghats is there. Then Manas National Park, where it is in the Assam. West Bengal Sundarban National Park, again the mangrove related national park, where even the tiger species which is basically walking in those particular mangroves, that is available. So that is also having significant danger because it is in the significant concern category, right? Now, when this World Heritage Outlook report के बारे में prelims और means के बारे में भी question पूछा जा सकता है. So the areas that are being highlighted, that can also be asked in the examination. For example, we have seen Manas National Park, where Assam, Sundarban in West Bengal. Now, even apart from that, which particular region this report is highlighting, that is further more important. This region is Western Ghats. So what is Western Ghats? What is geography? Let's see this thing. So it is roughly 1600 kilometer long. So if you see the map of India, let's say roughly this is the, let's say, western boundary. So yahan se leke pura aakhri tak ka region, that region is having a natural barrier available with certain passes, and that is very near to the western coast. It is running parallel to the western coast, which is the Western Ghats. Now, talking about these Western Ghats are even way older than the Himalayas, right? So age wise they are older than Himalayas. Now, talking about the region, what state it is? It is Gujarat. So from Gujarat, then Maharashtra, Goa, Karnataka, Kerala, and the Tamil Nadu. It is there. And where the eastern and the western Ghats are merging, it is in the specifically Nilgiri region, right? Now, ecological significance kya hai? So UNESCO's World Heritage Site, that's why obviously we are discussing, and it is one of the 36 biodiversity hotspot. What is biodiversity hotspot? Means it is holding or hosting a significant amount of biodiversity, which includes the flora also and fauna also. And that particular biodiversity is also facing certain threat. There are threats. The population is declining. There are certain number of population of the species which is in the critically endangered or vulnerable. And it is also one of the world's 8 hottest hotspot. Now, in the hotspot also, it is one of the hottest hotspot, means there is significant amount of population which is in the threat. That means the urgent concerns को address करने की requirement है यहाँ. Now, there are 325 globally threatened species that are available. Exact number obviously is not important, but significant amount of species that are there, and even they are threatened, including even the Nilgiri Thar. Right. Now, this is a evergreen forest region. So it is a non-equatorial. It is not situated at the equator or the equatorial region. It is non-equatorial tropical evergreen forest. If you see the location, it is basically lying below, roughly below the Tropic of Cancer, but above the equator, way above the equator, right? So that's why it is a tropical evergreen forest. Tropics region में available है. Influence on the Indian monsoon weather pattern, because see, when the monsoon waves are coming, let's say assume this is the equator region, right? So 0 degree. Now यहाँ से winds आ रही हैं, ठीक है? So there are southeast winds are coming like this, and after crossing the equator they are turning into the southwest winds, and then the western कोस्ट पे जो के पास में जो वेस्टर्न घाट्स है, दैट एक्ट्स एज अ बैरियर, एंड देयर आर सर्टेन पासेस थ्रू विच दीज विंड्स आर गेटिंग चैनलाइज्ड. सो इट इज आल्सो एक्टिंग एज अ बैरियर, इंश्योरिंग दैट द रेनफॉल शुड बी देयर. इट आल्सो फैसिलिटेट्स दोस पर्टिकुलर विंड वेव्स, राइट? सो दिस इज द केस, लाइक मानसून वेदर पैटर्न को ये इन्फ्लुएंस करता है. देन की बैरियर्स एंड मॉडरेट्स द ट्रॉपिकल climate, right? So all these are the significance of this particular region, Western Ghats. Now, when we talk about, obviously, as the report is highlighting, that there are significant threats that is associated with this. So what are the threats basically associated with the Western Ghat? Why it is there in the significant concerns wala list? First thing is the infrastructure development. When you talk about this, this is highlighting that the hydropower project, because a lot of rivers are flowing and these rivers are passing through the elevation. So that is giving or providing the potential for the hydropower development. So there are projects including Silahalla pumped storage hydroelectric project in the Nilgiris. Even apart from that, there are roads development, there are other infrastructure development, other hydroelectric power generation, those projects are there. So those are impacting the regional geography, that is causing the instability in the Western Ghat region, and obviously it is impacting the biodiversity. Next is the land use conversion. That means previously used to be forest, now cultivated or converted into the cultivable region or the agricultural region. So in that particular case, don't you think so that that leveling of field is not going to impact on that ecosystem? So that is also these things in converted to the agricultural land for tea, coffee, rubber, oil palm, right? Next is the human wildlife conflict. Now suppose karo, when let's say this is a forest, and if you are passing the railway project from this, now you have divided this forest into two region A and B. Now maybe a chance that the species are passing from here to here and then they are getting died. That is leading to the man and animal conflict, and also the regions are now get fragmented. So किसी region में there will be deprived of the biodiversity. Some region might be having excessive competition and then elimination of those species, right? So dense population already hai. Even the people are now, if you see the states, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Goa, they have high population density. So that is also one such issue. Even expansion of agriculture, because that particular population will need more food. So that is also one such issue. Then climate change. So when the climate change is there, that there is change with respect to the temperature pattern also. Where it used to be comparatively colder, now that region is getting warmer. So what the species will do, whether it is flora or fauna, that will shift also along with the temperature shift pattern. So there is an example of Nilgiri flycatcher that has moved from the warm lowland to the cooler highland area. Previously that region used to be the cooler region, but now because of the climate change, that region is getting warmer. Invasive alien species. Now when you are going to remove, let's say, the forest, obviously you are going to do certain plantation in order to hold that particular region. Now what you are doing, eucalyptus and acacia, these particular crops which are exotic as well as invasive, so that is reducing the local population. Local means local biodiversity population. Apart from that, that is taking the excess of mineral from the soil, and that is causing impact on the natural forest, right? So these are the issues or the threats that are being faced by the Western Ghats region, right? So you can expect the question even in the prelims regarding the geography, even from the perspective of the GS paper 3 environment and ecology, where the biodiversity mein man and animal conflict is one such prominent example, and even the biodiversity of Western Ghats is an important topic, right? So next is regarding the personality in news, and today's personality is news is the Vaikunt Bhai Mehta. So the time period is mentioned 1891 to 1964. But regarding his contribution, because see again, as I have already told you, that we generally talk about those personalities which are quite famous, and the NCRTs are talking about that. But there are many such prominent personalities who have contributed immensely, but not got the sufficient credit as far as the books are concerned. So whenever the government is celebrating any specific event regarding those personalities, that is very, very important. So recently the birth anniversary of Vaikunth Bhai Mehta was celebrated, and that's why he was in news. So born in Bhavnagar, Gujarat. Which region? Bhavnagar, Gujarat. With the name also you can get an idea regarding the region. Now, why he was famous? Because he was the pioneer doyen or the Bhishma Pitama of the cooperative movement in India. So when the question might be asked regarding the cooperative movement, you have the scope to quote about the personality of Vaikunth Bhai Mehta. Now, he served in the Maharashtra State Cooperative Bank as the chief executive for around 35 years. Apart from that, in the Bombay province, he was the Minister of Finance and Cooperation. Obviously, he was associated with cooperatives, right? He was also first chairman of the KVIC, Khadi Village Industries Commission, right? He was also provided with the title of Kaisar-e-Hind. The title was provided to the most prestigious personality who have contributed immensely, right? So he got this particular medal for the cooperative related development and his contribution in the Khadi and all. So he was also one such aide for Mahatma Gandhi, one of the prominent aide of Mahatma Gandhi. So most trusted lieutenant of Mahatma Gandhi ji in the Khadi movement, right? So again, now you can read the information, you can get the importance of this particular personality, but generally not read or not mentioned in the conventional books, right? So that's why it is important, and you can see the UPSC is also asking question about such personalities now. So this is about the Vaikunth Bhai Mehta. Now, let's discuss certain other quick updates. So first in this is the Global Financial Stability Report. Whenever there is any specific report in the news, you can expect the question like, this is the report which particular agency has issued this report. So it is by the International Monetary Fund, IMF, which is talking about the Global Financial Stability Report. Now you can also guess that the IMF is one such organization which is dealing with the financial stability. That's why it may be there. Other key reports are World Economic Outlook and also the Fiscal Monitor. These are being released by IMF. Now, this has been recently released. Now, what is this? This is the regular assessment of the global financial market. It assesses the financial market, the conditions of market, and highlights that whether there is any threat to the financial stability of the countries and the world in general. It talks also about the potential systemic weakness. What is the key findings? Dekho. Now, everywhere there is war going on, right? So when these war-like situations going on, obviously the getting of fund becomes comparatively difficult. So generally the accessing of fund become difficult. So tighten the global financial conditions. Apart from that, role of the major geopolitical risk event. Now when geopolitical risk is high, the country do not want to give money to other country because the returns are comparatively lesser possible, right? So that's why it is a issue. So this is regarding the Global Financial Stability Report. Next is the Subansiri Lower Hydroelectric Project. So Subansiri Lower Hydroelectric Project undergoes the test run. That's why this was there. Now in these particular cases, generally the river on which this is situated, what kind of project is this, and also the location where it is there. Generally itna hi पूछती है, not exactly कितना megawatt है क्या है, not that important. So Subansiri Lower Hydroelectric Project, run of the river scheme hai, where on the Subansiri river, which is a tributary of Brahmaputra river, important, where it is situated, North Lakhimpur on the Arunachal Pradesh Assam border. Who is the implementing agency? It is the NHPC, National Hydroelectric Power Corporation, right? So NHPC is the implementing agency regarding Subansiri Lower Hydroelectric Project. Now, in the wake of when the China is constructing dam on the Yarlung Zangpo or the Brahmaputra river, like this you can expect the question. Next is dark matter. So recently there have been studies that suggest that a dark matter could be explaining the mysterious gamma ray glow in the Milky Way center. So generally when you see the Milky Way, at the center there is something which is glowing. Now we exactly don't know because zaruri nahi hai na Milky Way ke beech mein there is something like the source of light like sun and all, right? So basically this is mentioned that dark matter ka study can provide the help in order to decode that. Now, what is dark matter? So, roughly 27% of the universe, as per estimation by the scientists, it is made up of the dark matter. जिसके बारे में we do not exactly know what is this, but it is an invisible glue which binds the entire universe, right? Now, it is an invisible glue that binds the universe together, making up most of the mass of the galaxies and the galaxy star. Because the things that you are able to see, sun, planet, different other star, different other things, that are the visible part, but that is roughly 5% only. 95% is roughly invisible, that is made up of the dark matter and the dark energy, right? So unlike normal matter, it does not interact with the electromagnetic force, that's why you can't see. So it neither gets absorbed nor reflects the light, right, nor emit the light, making it extremely hard to spot. So जब कोई चीज एब्जॉर्ब भी नहीं कर रही, एमिट भी नहीं कर रही, एंड दैट्स हाउ यू सी द थिंग्स, राइट? व्हेन आई एम एमिटिंग द लाइट, that's how you are able to see me, right? So that's the difficulty with respect to dark matter. Now, believed to shape the cosmos, organizing the galaxies, cosmic objects on the larger scale. That's why we say that the universe may a lot of mysteries that are yet to be decoded. Many kya matlab, we can say majority of the things are yet to be decoded. Next is regarding the Karakoram and the Changtang Wildlife Sanctuary. So when these wildlife sanctuaries are there, obviously the location is very important. So both of them are situated in the Leh Ladakh. So the context is that the proposal to redraw the boundaries of the Karakoram and the Changtang sanctuaries in Ladakh has been received by the central government. So what are these sanctuaries? Karakoram Wildlife Sanctuary 1987, Karakoram range in Ladakh region, right? So snow leopard, Himalayan brown bear, Himalayan wolf, ibex, then blue sheep, etc. are the prominent species, and flora mein alpine vegetation, medicinal plant, cold desert flora, these are important, right? So this is Karakoram. Generally, the question will be about location or some species related things. Species you can easily get if it is the high or the mountainous species wala thing. Then the Changtang Wildlife Sanctuary, again Changtang Plateau in the Leh Ladakh region, right? Home to the highest altitude water lake. So Muriri is there, then Pangong So is there, then Sokar is there. So these are the prominent lakes, right? Snow leopard, Tibetan wilderness, then the dark naked crane, right? So these are the species available. So this is regarding the Karakoram and the Changtang Wildlife Sanctuary. Next is regarding the national song Vande Mataram. So when we are aware regarding the basically regarding the Jan Gan Man, we should also have an idea regarding what exactly is the glory of Vande Mataram also. So in that particular sense, the Prime Minister in recent Mann Ki Baat have highlighted that these particular things should also be promoted, because right now we are going to celebrate the 150th anniversary of this particular beautiful song, right? Now, when this is there in news and it has played a very important role as far as the Swadeshi movement is concerned and the entire national movement is concerned, so we should be having an idea regarding who composed it, which particular novel may it was included, who sung it first and all, right? So Prime Minister urged citizens to mark the 150th year of national song memorable. So now, when we talk about the origin of this particular song, so it was originated roughly in 1870s by Bankim Chandra Chatterjee. The original composition was in Sanskrit. Now, after that, Bankim Chandra Chatterjee himself incorporated that in his novel Anand Mat in 1882. So later on it was incorporated in Anand Mat. After that, it was also provided with the equal status with Jana Gana Mana, which is the national anthem, right? Now it was first sung by, now see, 1894 was the year when Bankim Chandra Chatterjee died. Now it was sung for the first time in the Congress Assembly in 1896, which was in Calcutta session. Obviously he was not there, Bankim Chandra Chatterjee was not there, right? So it was Rabindranath Tagore, or Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore, who sung it for the first time in the Congress Assembly. Later on it was adopted as a major symbol of unification of India, right? So 24 January 1950, it got from the Constituent Assembly, it got the status of the national song of India, an equal status as Jana Gana Mana, which is the national anthem. Next is regarding coffee. Already in one such previous article, we have discussed in detail regarding coffee. But then Prime Minister, again in the Mann Ki Baat itself, highlighted that India is becoming a major coffee growers. It has become the 7th largest coffee grower, right? So India is now the 2nd largest coffee producer in the world globally. He has highlighted the popularity of the Indian coffee. Now India is producing both Arabica also and Robusta also, which are the two prominent varieties of coffee. Now 70% of the coffee produced in India is being exported. So it is one such product, a plantation crop, which is exported also. Roughly earning is $1.80 billion 2024-25. That means the potential is also very high if we further work upon this. Karnataka, which includes Chikmagalur, Kurg and Hassan, then Tamil Nadu, then Pune, Shevaroy, Nilgiri and Annamalai, then Kerala, Wayanad, Travancore and Malabar. These are the prominent regions which are producing, and even now the northeastern states are also getting step up in this particular context. Now soil, which soil is needed? So soil should be deep, fertile, rich in organic matter, well drained soil, but slightly acidic in nature. So 7, which is the neutral pH, वहां से थोड़ा कम, slightly acidic in nature. What is the condition? There should be gentle to moderate slopes होना चाहिए. Temperature should be comparatively moderate, 15 to 30 degrees Celsius. Then annual rainfall is 100 to 250 centimeters. So these are the conditions which are needed with respect to this. Next is regarding the Rashtriya Vigyan Puraskar. So government has recently announced the Rashtriya Vigyan Puraskar. Now, as the name suggests, Vigyan, this is provided for different streams of science. So all the possible streams of science which are there for the recognizing the contribution within the scientists, technologists, innovators in the diverse field of science, right? Now, there are 4 categories in which these awards are being provided. Just have a brief idea about that. Vigyan Ratna, lifetime achievement in the science. So who has got this? Professor Jayant Vishnu Narlikar. For the physics contribution, he has got posthumously the Vigyan Ratna Puraskar, which is the highest science award. And now you can see that even it can be provided posthumously. That means even after that it can be provided. So Hoyle Narlikar theory of gravity, which provided an idea which was alternative to the Big Bang theory, which he has provided. Next is the Vigyan Shri, which is for the distinguished contribution within the science, for the distinguishment within that particular science related sphere, it is being provided. Vigyan Yuva Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar, who had contributed significantly in the science domain, recognizing and encouraging the young scientists in India. And Vigyan team, as the name suggests, for the team effort, more than 3-member team, it can be provided if they have worked exceptionally in the science and technology domain. Next is regarding the National Biodiversity Authority. So National Biodiversity Authority recently released the fund for the Biodiversity Management Committee in the UP and Sikkim. So see, this is a authority. National Biodiversity Authority is a statutory authority that was formed under the Biodiversity Act of 2002. It was formed in 2003, statutory autonomous body, which is the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Now, where is the headquarter? It is in Chennai, right? Now, it has created 3-layer structure. So at the national level, there is National Biodiversity Authority. At the state level, there should be State Biodiversity Committee, and then there are, or the State Biodiversity Authority, then there is at the district level, there is a Biodiversity Management Committees. So Biodiversity Act and the rules provided State Biodiversity Board. So State Biodiversity Boards are there, and the Biodiversity Management Committee at the local level. So if the funding has to be provided to the Biodiversity Management Committee, the National Biodiversity Authority gives the funding to the State Biodiversity Board, and that facilitates money to the Biodiversity Management Committee. That was done in this particular case. So why this is being provided? So there are aspects कि भाई देखो sustainable use होना चाहिए biodiversity का, then fair and equitable sharing of benefit. For example, let's say a company goes in the village of UP and extracts something from that particular village which is having medicinal property. Now those local who are preserving that particular product should be compensated, and this is the responsibility of the National Biodiversity Authority in order to ensure the functions of the conservation, sustainable use and the fair and equitable sharing of the benefit. So fair and equitable sharing, jahan se aap extract kar rahe ho, that benefit should also be provided to that particular community. So this is regarding the National Biodiversity Authority. So with this, we have completed the entire News Today discussion for the 26th and 27th of October. Now there must be certain question on your screen. Try to solve them. Try to visit on this particular page. You will get further questions and the aspects regarding this. And further, whatever question I have asked you during this entire session, try to even answer that, because that will ensure breaking your inertia and taking certain things in a deeper manner. Because सिर्फ सुनने से काम नहीं चलेगा, you have to even implement those particular things even in the answer writing and from the very beginning only. So I hope the things whichever we have discussed in detail and also otherwise are clear to you. Thank you everyone. Have a great day.